Alright, so before we go into what today's video is about, which is if statement, we want to first of all create the directory, or you can call it folder, where we will be saving our file for today's lesson. So for us to do that, I am on my Linux machine. If you're on Windows, you can go ahead and hit on the window E to open your Windows Explorer. Now I'm gonna click on this for it to open, and my Linux Explorer just opened. I want to make a folder that I will save this my file. So in order for me to do that, I'll go ahead and right click on here. I have create new folder. If you're on Windows, right click it, then you should see new folder. Click on that and make a folder. And in my own case, I've already made mine, and it is called Learning Python. So we will go ahead and open this folder that we have just created in the code editor of our choice, so we can save our file and start coding. So if you have Visual Studio Code installed, or any code editor of your choice, in my own case I have Visual Studio Code, go ahead and right click on the Visual Studio Code and come to where you have new empty window. And once this new empty window opens like this, so we want to open that our folder we just created. So in order for us to do that, I now bring my mouse to where I have file. I click on that. So come to where you have open folder and click on that. And once that open, locates that folder that you just created. In my own case, it's called Learning Python. I click on that. I click on OK. My folder has been opened, and I have some files that is saved here already. The reason I have this file is that throughout the series I've been saving all the files in this particular folder, and that's the reason why I'm having all these files stored here. So let us go ahead and make a file that will save today's code. So in order for us to do that, so I will come to this tiny icon that it has a plus sign and click on that. Name my file if statement.py. Any name that you are giving to your file is okay, but it needs to end with .py because .py is simply a Python extension. Alright, so with that being said, let us jump down to what today's video is about, which is if statement. Programming often involves examining set of conditions before an action is taken. When we start writing a real world applications, you discover that there are many times that we want to check a certain condition, whether it is met, whether a certain test is made first before we decide to carry out a certain action on a particular line of code. So we can do this with the help of if statement. If statement is simply a way of examining some certain conditions and deciding whether that condition is met, or writing a code that can be executed if the condition that follows that if statement is met or not. So in this particular lesson here, we can go ahead and say that if condition evaluates true when Python is running a test on a particular line of code, Python executes that line of code that is following it. But if the test is not passed, Python go ahead and skip the line of code and try to process the other one. So what do I mean by this? I'm going to pull up small example about list here. And if you are confused about what list is, I have a dedicated video that I really go in depth looking at what lists are in Python. So go ahead and look on the video that I titled list, then play on it and go through it. You should be able to understand. But something that you need to know quickly about lists is that lists always start with a square bracket, as you are seeing here, and the items that are going to be stored inside this square bracket are called elements or items. So in our case, let us say that we want to just, for example, build a list of cars, and we have a car called Tesla, and we have another car called Ford. Okay, we have another called Lamborghini, like this, and we have another car called BMW, and let's make another car to be Toyota, like that. Okay, Toyota. Alright, so we have a list of cars, and we have 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 elements inside this particular car. So in order for us to look at how if statement works in action, we want to loop through. Remember, we talked about how to loop through a list. So if you are confused about what loops are, and in particular we looked at how to use a for loop, check the same series of the same playlist of this video. you would see a video titled for loop and indentation. So click on that, try to watch it and go through it, then you'll be able to understand. So you can go ahead and say for car in cars. So what we are saying here is go through the list of these cars. Here we have Tesla, we have Ford, we have Lamborghini, we have BMW, we have Toyota. Go ahead and check the list of car, look on them, all of them one by one, and as it's looping on them one by one, remember that this particular values, this item automatically will be transferred and they will be stored in this our car variable here because of this for loop here. So what is going to happen here is that immediately we say for car in cars, so this Tesla now will be stored in this car variable, so we can do anything with this car. We can go ahead and print them, and Ford will be stored in car, Lamborghini will be stored in car, and BMW will be stored in car. So for all these car inside the cars list, if there is any car inside this our car list that is equals to BMW, you know, when we are looking at cars are supposed to start perhaps maybe in the capital letter also, but BMW is an abbreviation for this particular car company, and BMW is not supposed to be in the small letter as we have in this particular order. So let us look through our list and write a certain condition that if there is any car called BMW, go ahead and print that car and change the case to uppercasing. Remember we talked about what dot upper is. So if you are confused on that, dot upper method is used to convert any case letter in Python to all upper cases. So this dot upper that we are using here, we are simply saying go through all these car inside the list of these cars here. Now if there is any car that is called BMW, and in our case is true, as you can see, go ahead and convert this BMW to uppercase. That's the reason we are using this method dot upper. So this is one example of how we can use if. So if this condition here equals true, this line of code is going to run. That's what we try to explain at the introductory part of the video. We now say else. If this line of code equates to false, if it's not true, if it's equals to false, automatically Python is not going to run this code and it's going to jump to where we have else and run what is following this else. So let us go ahead and see what we can write for else. So we can go ahead and just say else print the remaining cars in the title cases, that is capitalize the first letter in all the words inside this our list. So if we hit on the Control A's to save our work and Control plus A5, it's going to show the result for you in the terminal. As you can see the results of what is coming down here, Python comes to our list of cars, and first of all start with Tesla and say Tesla is not equals to BMW here. As you can see, this is the work of the if here. It's not equals to BMW, so it now print Tesla in a title case. It only capitalized the first letter of Tesla. Now left that one, comes to the Ford here, and look at Ford. Ford is not equals to BMW, capitalize the first letter. Did the same thing to Lamborghini, capitalize the first letter, and fortunately he now discovered that there is a BMW here, and he said I've seen BMW, so it went ahead and just capitalized the whole letters, as you can see here, printing everything in uppercase. And immediately Python finishes, it now moves over to Toyota and said Toyota, you are not equals to BMW, and went ahead and print Toyota in the title case also. So this is the work of if that we were trying to explain. Okay, so that was just the introductory part of what if statement is in Python programming. I think all programming languages also make use of if statement, so but this is exactly how to use if statement in the Python. So I want to go ahead and just copied something here for you. Before we go deep into the examples that I have for today's tutorial, I first of all want to show you that we have some comparisons operators. We have the equality sign. Now we have already used equality sign in this case. We have seen how to use it here. If car equals to BMW. So once you want to compare a certain weight to a certain weight, or a number to another number, or you want to compare two different values, two possible values, you would want to go ahead and use double equal sign, because remember, if you are using a single equal sign, you are assigning the value of what is in the right hand side to the variable of what is in the left hand side. This is what I mean. If supposing I did something like this, I said if car is equals to BMW. So now this would be me assigning BMW to this variable car. And if you are not okay with this tiny explanation that I'm giving, go ahead and click on that video that we discuss things about variable. You'll be able to understand after watching it. Okay, so this double equal sign here is a comparison operator that you use in comparing BMW to this car. Is it equals true or not? Okay, so from here we also have inequality sign, as you can see here. An inequality sign is just using this exclamation mark like this with equal sign. This simply means that it's not equals to. This one is equals to, like but this one now is equals to. This can be very useful. You will see example of how we can use it. For example, in this particular case, we would have said if car is not equals to BMW, to do something. So that's exactly one of the way you can use is not equals to. We have less than, comparison operator. We have less than or equals to. We have greater than, as you can see the symbol here, the sign, and we have greater than or equals to, as you can see it here. We will see how to use some of them. We have in and not in. And in our example here, you have already seen how we make use of in here, because we said for car in cars, that is if there is any car in this our cars. So this is a comparison operator. Supposing there was no car inside these cars that is called BMW, the condition would automatically equate to false. So from there we also have another operator set we call logical operators, and so we have and we have or. So when we are looking at and tries to be similar to what you know about normal and in English, because hands here only equates true when two values are equals to true. Like what I have here said, two values must be true before code evaluates true. So for example, if I said a equals to 100 here, then I now said if b and a equals 100. Okay, this is how you can use and. This simply means that the value of b and the value of a must be true before this code can run true. While we also have an a or statement. An or statement only requires one value to be true, and the line of code would automatically equate true. Don't worry your head about what I'm explaining at the moment. We are going to see from example, and immediately we looked at example, I can promise you that you get to understand. So let us just see some example that I have here. We already see how to use equality sign. So we already see that we can say a car. You can say car. Let us just say car equals to okay, say BMW. Okay, so we can go ahead and say print is car equals to car. Okay, or we can say is car equals to BMW. So what we are doing here, we are just citing examples based on these operators here to just see. So if we go ahead, hit Control A, Control plus A5, you can see that we have true here. I think I need to just comment this out. It's our face code out in order to remove other codes from running, so we can understand what we are doing. Okay, you can see from here. That it equates true. Why is it equates true? Because we use comparison operator to ask Python, is BMW equals, is it the same thing like car? And in this case, it's the same thing like car, because we already have BMW here assigned to this car. So this car that you are seeing, this variable here carries a value inside it, and that value is BMW. So we comparing whether BMW is equals to BMW, which is stored inside this car. Python automatically said yes, that is true, that BMW is equals to BMW, which is stored inside this car, and that's why we are having this true. All right, let us look at how to use inequality real quick. So we can go ahead and say car equals to Toyota. Oops, Toyota, like this. So let's say print car is equals to Ford. Okay, all right. So you can see here that not equals to this pops true. Why is it popping true? Now we have a value here and it is called Toyota here, and we assign this Toyota to the variable car here. So this thing that is standing here is Toyota. This is Toyota that is standing here. Toyota is stored inside this car. In fact, it would be very nice if we remove this car here and just put, for clarity purpose, and just put Toyota here, and just put Toyota here. So remember that immediately we assign this value Toyota to this car. So this value is stored inside this car now, this variable. So if we carry this variable and compare with this Ford here, so I'm trying to, if we carry this variable and compare with this Ford, Toyota is stored in this car already, and we are telling Python, is Toyota not equals to Ford? Python is going to tell us yes, because it's not equals to Ford. Now supposing we said Python, is Toyota not equals to Toyota? Python will say that no, it's going to say false, that Toyota is equals to Toyota here, not equals here. We are saying go ahead and check, is Toyota that is stored inside this car not equals to Toyota here that we are comparing the value to, and Python is telling us no, that Toyota is equals to Toyota. So that is exactly what we are seeing here. So the first time that we had Ford here and we are telling Python, is Toyota not equals to Ford? Python is telling us yes, that Toyota is not equals to Ford, and that not equals is this particular logical operator that we have here. So we have many of them. You can go ahead and play with a lot of them. If anywhere you have problem trying to understand, you can go ahead and drop a comment, drop your question in the comment section below, because I will do my best to check that and to answer some of the question. But one thing I need to really point your attention on is that Python is a case sensitive programming language. What do I mean by Python is a case sensitive programming language? If you have something like this, if you have Tesla like this Tesla is not the same thing with this Tesla. Even when on the human side, you would think that they are the same thing. Like you can say this, you might think that these are, all of them are the same thing. But in Python treats these three values differently. This one are on all lowercase, and this is a title case, and this one is a kind of camel case. So Python is going to treat them differently. In fact, for you to see one example here that Python is going to print it differently, let us try to see one example so you understand what I mean. So if we go ahead and print Tesla here, and we are asking Tesla is equals to this car, you see that Python is going to say false, that is not equals. As you can see here, Python prints false. Look at this line. Python is printing false here. And why is it printing false? Because this is in all lower cases, and this one now is in title case, because the first letter is capitalized. So that is exactly how you can notice. So how can this be useful? Imagine you have an app that you have users that are registering to your database. Of course, somebody might have a username. Let's assume the username is the first person sign up to your application and have the first username to be John. Another person also sign up and use capital J here and have John here. Now it is your job as a Python programmer to write a line of code that will automatically convert anything that is coming from users and into lower cases, in order for you to be able to compare whether this particular value already exists. Because if you allow this to be like this and you are trying to write a line of code for Python to go to database and check whether the value that user is supplying has already existed in the database. Python is going to go to database, check on it, and even when there is John here, another John is coming, Python is going to tell you that there is no John, that the value didn't exist in the database, and it's going to permit this John again to also be registered, which can be very, very wrong. So understanding something of this nature can be very, very helpful to you, that that Python treats cases differently. So in order for you to be on a safer side, this type of situation, you can go ahead, receive whatsoever data user is pushing up from its own user in, and convert it to lowercase, and now use that to do the comparison. Okay, let us from here look at an example of using and or in this particular case. Remember that it's not only strings value that we can compare numbers also. So let us say, for example, we have a equals to 400 here, and we have b equals to 500. All right, so if we want to go ahead and see how and work, we can say something like print a equals 400. Okay, a equals 400 like this, and b equals 500. That is what we are saying here is except a equals 400 and b equals 500. In this case, this line of condition is going to evaluate true. Why is it evaluating true? Because here as you can see, in this particular case, it's equals to 400, and b also is equals to 500. So if we hit Ctrl A and Ctrl plus A5, you can see that that line of code runs true. Supposing we were using an if statement and said, if this line of code runs true, do a certain thing, just know that this line of code has been equated to true. That line of code that is following this this conditional test is going to run. So this is one example of how we can use the AND logical operator. Alright, so let us look at how we can use AND with less than and greater than or equals to, something of that nature. So let us see another example here and say a is less than 400 and b is greater than or equals to 500. Okay, so what are we doing here in this second example here? Remember, we are still using this variable. Okay, let us see what is going to be the possible result here. We now looked at our a variable, and a is not less than 400. A is only equals to 400. So because this particular condition here, in fact, I need to wrap this bracket. So for clarity purposes, it's always advisable to wrap your conditional test in a bracket like this. So look at this very well. This particular line of code equates false. So that automatically is going to make this particular line of code to equate to false also. Why? Because of the AND. So we explained before that before AND can be equals to true, before AND can be equals to true, two possible values must be true and true. That's the reason you can think of it like two possible values must be 1 and 1. That is true and true before the line of code equals true. So if one of them is false and one of them is true, the answer is going to be false. The output is going to be false. In this case, if we hit Ctrl A and Ctrl plus A5, you can see here that Python is telling us that it is false. And why is it false? Because b is greater than or equals 500. Okay, b is 500 already here, so this equates true. B is 500, this equates true, but this automatically equates to false, and that automatically make this line of code, this line of comparison, to equate to false. I hope you understand how AND work and how OR works. Okay, now let us also look at a very fast example about how to use OR. Okay, let's say we have x equals to 1000 and we have y equals to 400, and we have z equals to 200 here, something of this nature. So if we go ahead try to compare these particular values using OR, so we can say x is greater than 2000, for example, and we now say OR, okay, or y is less than or equals to 400, okay, or z is greater than, I need to also wrap this, Z is greater than 300. Okay, so what is this line of code? What is it going to equate? True. Why is it equating true? The reason why it is equating true is we already mentioned that once you are using or, that any of the code, any side of the code that equates true, that line of code is going to equate true when you are using or. So or is like saying if this happen or this one happens, go ahead and run it. Now why and is both side of the thing must be true, and this one must be true before the line of code run. So here we have x, we are saying x is greater than 2000. So in this case x is not greater than 2000 because x is only equals to 1000. So this automatically run false, this first line run false. So you now say, okay, let me also go back to the second line of equation and say is y less than or equals 400. So let's look at y. Okay, yes, y runs true because y is equals to 400. So y is less than or equals 400. So this line of code runs true. So let us look at what happened in z. This line of code also is z greater than 300. Okay, z is not greater than 300, is equals to 200. So this is the line of code here that automatically makes the whole of this line of code run true. So I hope you understand how or works and how and works. So I also have Boolean expression here, and once we are talking about Boolean expression is just about whether a particular line of code is true or whether it is false. So Boolean expression, as you can see here, Boolean values provides a way to decide the state of a program. Okay, so whether a program, don't worry, we are going to see some examples about this maybe later in the lesson. So whether a line of, should a game continue, you can decide to use a flag. I said you can set game active maybe equals to, for some reason maybe the game should just turn false and something should happen, maybe the program should quit. In fact, let me give you a real world example. Imagine you are building a game, and that game that you are building, if the city collapses, the game should be over. Or perhaps if it's a football game that you are playing, once the minutes reach up to 90, the game should just automatically close. Or if the person that you were supposed to protect in that game it has been killed, the mission should expire and that game should close. So you can go ahead and use Boolean expression in this particular situation, like game active. Now if the person that you are supposed to protect, if the city that you are supposed to protect, if the city has been destroyed, this game active turn false, and immediately the game active turn false, go ahead and quit the program. So this is exactly one way that you can use Boolean expression. Boolean expression is just a way of helping you to write program that can either decide whether your program should continue or whether your program should stop based on the conditional met in that particular field. All right, so let us see one example here. I have just small example that I wrote. Okay, so let us assume that in your country that they are using an application to do voting during election. All right, so government decides to set a voting age to say that once somebody is reaches the age of 18, that is when that person is eligible to vote. So let us just look at some possible things that I wrote here to be a condition. So this stands to be the settings of government. Okay, so let us say that this one is the age that each user provides. Okay, so the first condition we said here, if the age, let us assume that this user's age equals 23 is the age that someone imputes inside the app. So and we went ahead and we go ahead and run some conditions here to check whether in the person's age is meet up with the age that governments have imputed here as a standard age and said, if anybody doesn't meet the age of 18, please, the person should go until the person reaches the age of 18. That is when the person will be eligible to vote. So we can go ahead and write some lines of condition using if in this particular level, and said if user's age, if the age user is providing, as you can see, user's age from here, if user's age is equals to, is greater than, that is if it's from 18 or is equals to 18, that is equals to this voting age. Remember that this 18, the value here will be stored in this variable called voting age. So if this user's age, if what somebody is providing, which is user's age in this particular case, if it's greater than or equals to this voting age, go ahead and print a message telling the person you can go ahead and vote. You are of age, okay, something of that nature. All right, so let us also look at possibilities. What can possibly happen if the person age has not reached the standard voting age that government has decided? We can go ahead and print the person a kind of message informing the person, the user, that their age have not reached. We can say something like, oh, you can say, sorry, you can't vote this year. We can say something like, please try again. Okay, please try again when you are up to 18. Yes. All right, so we can go ahead and run something of this nature. If you notice, I drop a backward slash here. So the work of this backward slash is just to join this line that I'm putting in a new line, and telling Python that this line continues in this particular first line here. So this is the job of, that's the job of this backward slash. All right, so let's go ahead, hit on Control S and Control plus A5 to see which condition is going to run. Okay, so we see the result in the output here in the terminal, which says you can go ahead and vote, you are of age. So why is he saying that? Because Python run this first line of code here and say, I discovered that the age that you are providing is even greater than 7, not just equals to, is greater than the age that government decides that until someone reaches this 18 years of age, that's when the person will be able to vote. So you provided 23 years, so that age is greater than 18, so go ahead and vote. So supposing there is a user here that I came to this our app and just type something like 16 years, Control plus S, Control plus A5. Let us see what would have happened. You can see here we have this other message popping up here and says, sorry, you can't vote this year. Please try again when you are up to 18 years. So this is exactly how we can use if statement in combination with the greater than or equals to in this level to check some conditions whether they are met or not before we run a certain line of code. Now there are times that you will want to check for two possible situations. You can use if else, but you must know that Python executes one block of code in an if else chain. When a single line of condition passes the test, Python executes that line of code following it and skip the rest. Now what do I mean by this? Let us say that we have students that are in maybe year 1, year 2, year 3, and we want to give school fees amount based on the year that somebody is. If you are in year 1, which is if you are a new student, you should pay a different amount of money, and if you are a year 2 student, you should pay a different amount of money. Then if you are in final year, you should go ahead and pay something that is a big. If you have not even registered in the school and you are coming for the first time and you want to come and make an inquiry, and perhaps you are picking up a form, you have not yet started, you have not been admitted fully, perhaps maybe you should pay a certain amount of money. Let us just see how can we use if in this particular situation and how can it help. All right, so we can go ahead and write condition like this and said if we say student, if student year is equals to 1, okay, print, go ahead and print your school fees is, we can say your school fees is $100. All right, so from here let us just copy this condition and use elif here and said, okay, elif student here is 2. If the student is in level 2, the school fee should be $200. So elif, okay, elif student here is year 3, if the person is in year 3, that the school fees should be $300 US. Else, that is else, if the person is just coming to check, to make some inquiry, we should tell the person, you are welcome to our school, okay, let's say to our school, please, how may we help you? All right, so now let us say that there is a student that is registering from here. So after writing this condition, there is a student that decided to log into this our app from here and choose that its own year is year 1 here. So if we hit on Control A and Control plus A5 to run this code, you can see that Python automatically run this line of code here, which is year equals student here equals 1, and print this the line of code that is following this print, and said your school fees is $100 US. The reason that Python decides to choose this particular line of code is because this first condition is met. And something you need to understand about using if and else blockchain when you are doing comparison in Python is that once one line of code is met, Python is going to skip the rest of these lines here because this has been met. This is equals to true. Python doesn't bother itself to come down again and keep processing this other one. Now, but we were on to how you can use this elif. So let us look at how this elif is really working well in this particular scenario here. Now, supposing we were saying something like, if student here is equals to 1, go ahead and tell the person that the person's school fees is $100. Else, tell the person that the person is welcome to our school. Now, what happens to those students that they are in year 2, year 3, and perhaps maybe if our school is up to year 4, students that are in also year 4? That means the conditions doesn't meet them. So in order for us to just go ahead and just ask Python, first of all, try send a message. If somebody is in year 1 and the person choose year 1, send a message to that person. Otherwise, if like elif is like saying if the person is not in year 1 now, but this person is still our student, but the person is in year 2, also send the person a message. If the person is not in year 3 but the person is our student, if the person is in year 3, go ahead and send the person a message. That is where this elif comes in here. That's elif is a way of checking for multiple conditions, for 2 or 3 different types of conditions. Anyone that is met, Python is going to go ahead and run that and skip the remaining. Now, there's something I also want to drag your attention on. Using this else block in Python when you are writing conditional tests is not a must. It's not a must. There are times that there are some situations that you want to write a line of code, a block of conditional tests, and including this else can make your code not to run appropriately the way you want. Okay, let's try to look at a example of how this else, using this else statement cannot will not allow our codes to run the way we wanted. Supposing we have something like this, and let's say that our school happens to have a year, like it has year 1, it has year 2, it has year 3, it has year 4, and we only want to print messages to only people that are already students of the school. We don't have any business with anybody that is coming to make inquiry. in that particular situation, if we include this else statement here, that is going to make our code not to run very well. Instead, we can go ahead and end our code with elif. So let's say if student here is up to, if the person is in year 4, go ahead and print a message to the person that your school fees is perhaps maybe $400. Let's see, your school fees is 400 US dollars. So with this now, the code can run the way we want. Now if we happen to add else, what are we going to meet with else again? We already check all the possible scenarios in this particular situation. We already check. If a student is in year 1, go ahead, tell the person how much school fees the person has to pay. If the person is in year 2, go ahead, tell the person how much school fees he has to pay. If the person is in year 3, do the same. If the person is in year 4, do the same. So there would be no way, there is no need again for us to add else. If you add any else statement in this particular situation here, our code might not run the way we want it. So that is exactly what that point is trying to explain, that it's not a must when you are using else to end your code. In fact, I'm going to show you another statement that using if alone can make your code to run exactly the same way you want. So let us just say that the student comes here, sign up in our site, and choose that is in year 4. Hit on control plus A5. As you can see, your school fees is 400 US dollars. I will just comment this example out and drop the code for you for reference purposes if you want to just go through it. So for the sake of this particular point here, I'm going to just drag one example here that I have here. So a list. So if you are confused about what a list is in Python, I have a dedicated video for list here. Go ahead and check that. So let us say that a customer walking into our restaurant, or you can call it food shop, and make some order, and the person ordered beans, or ordered cheese, and ordered French fries right now. So now whatsoever those food that the customer ordered, we now decides to create a variable here called customer requested food order and save the person's order inside this variable here. So what you need to know right now is that beans, cheese, and French fries have been saved. They are now inside this customer requested food order here. Okay, so we can go ahead and just write some conditional tests to see something and set. Let us see how using only if can work in this case. So we can go ahead and say if cheese in this customer food order, okay, print, go ahead and print the kind of message and say cheese is being added to your order. All right, now if we try to use elif here, immediately this first line of code here equals true. Python is going to skip the rest. But in this particular situation here, what we want is, we want to write a code that would instruct Python to keep going back to this list. If there is cheese inside this customer's order, send this message to the customer. Now once you send that message, don't stop there. Go ahead and still go back again to this list and continue checking. That is where we can use this if again in this particular set and say something like, if there is Gary in the customer food order, go ahead and print Gary is being added to your order. All right, so we want to continue checking the conditions again to see. Now we go ahead and say if beans in the customer requested food order, go ahead and print a message and said beans is added to your order. All right, so right now if we hit on Control S and Control plus A5 to check, as you can see the result in the output. Let's see. Okay, as you can see the result in the output, Python now decides to first of all check this line of code. If cheese is in customers requested food, if the food we have in our store, which is cheese. If there is cheese, like if the customer has also selected cheese among his own order of food, go ahead and send this person this message, and that's why we are seeing cheese is being added to your order, what you are seeing here. Okay, so now after that, now because we didn't use elif, supposing we use elif, and supposing we use if and else, Python, this is where Python would have stopped. Python would not have any business to try to come down to this second line of code. So this is where using if is very, very appropriate. Once you want to check for multiple conditions at the same time, you want all of them to keep running until whether any of them is false or any of them is true, go ahead and use if and avoid using elif and else, depending on how your program you want it to work. So in our own case, even when there is cheese inside this customers requested food order, Python didn't stop there. Python went ahead and checked the second line, and in this particular one we said if there is Gary in the customer requested food order, go ahead and send a message that Gary is being added to the person's order. But in this case, the customer didn't order for any Gary inside, so this condition now equates false, as you can see here, and that's the reason Python didn't print that message down here in the terminal. So Python now runs down again to the third line of the test, as you can see here, which is checking whether there is beans, checking whether there is beans inside the order that the customer requested, and now checking, and there is beans inside here, as you can see here, and that's why we have beans is added to your order. So now the summary of what I'm showing you between using if, elif and else here is that whenever you want to check for multiple conditions to be met, on all of them you want Python to keep checking and checking whether they equate true or whether they equate false, go ahead and use if statement. But if you want only whenever only one line of code equates true, that Python should skip the remaining, go ahead and use if, elif and else statement. Okay, so let us look at another scenario here. And what we want to do is first of all checking whether a customer has made an order before we start processing anything. So in this case, let us call our list customer requested foods, and the first thing we want to do is we want to first of all write a condition and said go ahead and before you process anything, before you check for any food and print out any message and do anything, first of all check if customer requested foods. So what we are doing here is if the customer indeed have requested any food, and as you can see here, customer have not requested any food in this particular scenario here. So if the customer have requested any food, so we can go ahead and say for food in the customer requested food. Okay, all right, so we can now say if the food, as you are going through the food, if there is any food that is equals to seafood, all right, so print something like sorry, we are out of seafood at the moment. All right, and let us see this example. All right, so else print adding, and we can say adding food. All right, then that title. All right, so what are we doing here? The first if here we are saying go ahead here and first of all check in this list here the order that this customer is submitting. Is there any food? Has the person make any order? If yes, that the person has make any order, this thing that we are writing, if customer requested food, this automatically is going to turn true here if there is anything inside here. So in this case, since there is nothing inside here, this line of condition is going to turn false. So we are going to still complete this else here. See if there is any food here. What we are doing here is, if there is any food, if this customer have ordered any food, go ahead and loop through the food and said, for food in this customer food, do something, which in this case we are saying, if there is any food that is called seafood, go ahead and tell the customer that we are sorry, we don't have the seafood at the moment. Otherwise, go ahead and just print adding food one by one. So right now, we want to come here and also print a kind of message to the user, something of this nature. We can say, thank you for buying from us. All right, something like that. And from here we can complete this to be else. And why do we have else here? Now, if there is any food inside this customer's order, go ahead and run all this code here. Otherwise, if there is no food here, go ahead and print another message, and maybe something like this: please make an order so we can save you better. All right, so this is one example again on how we can use if in this particular case. And in this scenario, is always very appropriate before you start asking your if and perhaps maybe your loop or your line of if to run and do a certain carry out a certain task. It makes sense for you to first of all check, is there any possible is there any availability of the value that you are trying to check before you. And in this case, the value here is that if we hit Control plus A5, if we decide to run this code, you will see that this line that we have, I'm trying to square this from here. Okay, trying to let me Control plus A5. So as you can see here, Python has to skip all these lines of code and now boils down to this particular else statement, and now print this message down here and say, please make an order, so we can save you better. And why is this line of code running? Because there is nothing inside this list. This customer have not ordered anything, so it always makes sense to us to first of all check if, so you can say if user in users, first of all check if there is any available of users first. If there is users, just in case maybe there is nobody registering in your app, you don't go ahead and just start running the loop. Just go ahead and start running your code. First of all, check, is there any user first? If there is any user, then do something. Now go ahead and check if there is any this, do something. So I have one last example that I want to also show you, and that is how to compare a list to another list using in keyword. Remember, we mentioned that we are going to go through different comparisons operator. So in this case, let us say that for the sake of time, I will just copy this and paste. So let us say that we have a food in our shop, and this food here, and this is much, so I can cut some. So we have food stored in our store already. We have something that we are selling, and these foods now are stored in a list. So we have French fries, we have seafood, we have cheese, we have beans inside our store, and all of them are stored in a variable called food in store. All right, I'm just using that for example for clarity purpose. And a customer walked into our shop and requested some food, and the person requested cheese and french fries. That's the reason we what the food that the person requested, we store it in customer requested food. So we can go ahead and write some conditions here, and said first thing we want to first of all check whether the customer has indeed make a request, just like we saw in earlier version, before we proceed in the carry on the other sides of the code. So let's look at how we can do this. We said if customer indeed, if customer requested foods, like, so we can go ahead and say for food in customer, we'll go ahead and loop in that. Now if the food here, this is what the another example I wanted to show you. If food here in food in store, okay, so let me explain this. At first we first of all check, okay, this customer that is coming into us, has a person placed any order? If yes, that the person have placed an order, go ahead and loop through the order that this person is placing, and each food now is going to be stored in this variable called food here. That because we said for food in customer requested foods, and note, remember that we saved all the foods that this customer requested in customer requested foods, and as we are looping through this customer requested foods here, all the foods will now be stored in this food. So since they are now stored, cheese now are now stored in the food, french fries is stored in food, so we now carried this food again to also do some comparison, to run a quick test again, and said okay, as you are looping inside the customer requested foods list, and as you are checking the food one by one, if the food that's what we are saying here, if the food, as you are looking at that, if the food that the customer is requesting is inside what we have in our store, and that's what we are saying, if food in store here, that is only when we will go ahead and do something. So if food in the food in store, go ahead and print adding adding food. Of course this can be anything. That's a possible example I came up with. Okay, remember what .title does is just to change the cases to title case. Now if the food in store, go ahead and print adding food. Else, if there is no, if the food that the customer is requesting is not among the one that we have in store, go ahead and print a message like maybe sorry, we are out of the food you requested. Okay, like this. All right. Okay, so we are out of the food you requested. So let us also write a condition here. After running this code here, go ahead and send the customer a kind of conclusive message here. So we can put another something here and say something like your order is now ready. Okay, all right. And okay, and from here we want to write the last else else statement. Now here is going to be something like else if this list is empty, go ahead and send a message to the person like please make an order. All right, so if we hit Control plus A5, you will see that the result is going to come out. Python is going to run this code inside here because we have cheese, and cheese here is inside food in the store, and that's why Python is running this code. So I will stop from here, but before I stop here right now, I am going to give you some guidelines on how to write a better if statement. So what I want to show you now is that it's better for you to write something like this: if x is less than 4 with some space. This is better than writing something like this: if it's better than writing if x is less than 4. So this is better than writing this. If you write this, Python is not going to throw you an error, but the problem is that your code could be very hard to read and sometimes to even debug. I hope you liked the video. Please subscribe to the channel and click that like button if you find this video helpful. Turn on your notifications so that each time I post a new video like this one, you'll be notified to come check on it. You can share this video with as many people you think might find it useful. Okay, so with that being said, I hope to see you in the next one. Bye bye.